Hello and welcome to As It Comes, live from a musician's point of view. I'm Davina, I'm a freelance cellist based in London, and I'm now embarking on a rather peculiar summer. So it's summer here in the UK, which means temperatures soaring into the lofty heights of the 20s, even the 30s. Now, don't laugh, Australia, I know these are mild temperatures for you, but really exciting for British people. Just as a side note, I remember my first winter I experienced in Sydney back in 2009, and on the news, their main story was cold front sweeps through New South Wales. Temperatures plummet to 13 degrees. That was the main story of the national news on television. And then they showed all these pictures of people wearing coats and hats, those unexpected garments. Unbelievable. That year, we also had a dust storm, where loads of dust blew over from the desert eastwards towards the city and turned everything red. I woke up that morning and I thought I'd moved to Mars. Such a strange place. Anyway, weather aside, this summer is peculiar because I won't be working, given a certain pandemic, and instead of getting moany about this, I'm going to embrace the fact that I have loads of free time to see the country and see my friends from a distance. It's going to be the summer of the picnic, of socially distant socialising. People are starting to play chamber music, even orchestral music, outdoors, which is a joy, because in normal times, it's nearly impossible to get everyone together at the same time to do that for fun. Tomorrow, I'm going to go to Brighton, because I can. And it's usually so rare for me to just pop down to the sea without it being attached to work. So I'm going to take advantage of this free time because it's the first summer I've been able to do this since I moved to the UK. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, do enjoy yourselves and remember to be responsible. But if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, stay inside and eat lots of delicious food. Speaking of the Southern Hemisphere, my guest this episode is Justine Cormack, a seriously accomplished violinist and creative performance coach from New Zealand. What hasn't she done? She founded and was in the NZ Trio for 17 years. She's been concertmaster of the Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra, was a member of the NZSO, and she's got a whole load of recordings to her name. I know her from my Auckland uni days, where she was a string lecturer. We chat about her move from the city to the countryside, her Grand Designs featured house, and her philosophy Listen, Feel, Play, which focuses on harnessing physical awareness and movement that we can bring to our music making by getting out of our heads and listening to, feeling, and exploring what's going on in our bodies instead. We also talk about food, standard, and if you listen carefully, you'll hear a cameo from Justine's cat, Coco. Here's my conversation with Justine Cormack. Yeah. How was your family time, by the way?
Oh, good. Yeah. So I had and some friends too. So my sister and brother-in-law are looking to move down this way as well. My brother-in-law's from Roxburgh, which is further south of here. It's sort of between here and Dunedin, kind of.
Okay. So where are you? Are you in Wanaka?
Well, just out of Wanaka.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, it's school holidays here at the moment. So they're down here for 2 weeks. So they're sort of coming and going a little bit. Mm-hmm. And actually, Mark is on his way home from quarantine. So he's going to get home today. I'm going to go and pick him up from the airport after this. He's been in the hotel in Auckland for the last 2 weeks in quarantine.
Like any other time being in a hotel would be fine, but it's like when you're in a hotel and you actually just can't do anything else. It's like, it's so boring.
Well, I've actually, one of the things, I think musicians are very good about being shut in rooms. So, he had lots of study to do because, he's got lots of concerts coming up now, which is great. So they're all starting this coming weekend for him. And so he had lots of work to do. So he's actually been fine, but, it is bizarre.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you'll get to see each other. Justine Cormack, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast from your amazing house just outside of Wanaka in the South Island in New Zealand. And it's quite funny because I'm here just watching the sunset somewhat here in London and you're talking to me in the future tomorrow.
Yep, I am. The sun's coming up.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, but how's it been in New Zealand? Because New Zealand continues to be the envy of the rest of the world, and you're pretty much out of lockdown now, and life is getting back to normal. How was lockdown for you in such a beautiful, serene part of the world?
Yeah, well, there were some silver linings for sure, and one of them was being able to just be at home with my husband. He's a orchestral conductor, and so he's away a lot. We both sort of travel around a bit, so it was really nice to just be able to be in one place together and at home in our beautiful house that we've now been in for a year, and we've had lots and lots of guests, which has been great. But it was really lovely to just have the place to ourselves and our cat.
Oh, your cat. Oh,
So that was really lovely. But of course, at the same time, there was this huge question hanging over us in terms of what was going to be happening in the future with our industry. So, we were trying not to worry about it, but I mean, it's still very much a big question in terms of, what this means for us going forward. So we just had to make the most of the time that we had together. Like Mark was going to be in Hong Kong and then San Francisco, and yeah, but it has been lovely to have the space and time and enforced break
yeah.
and a time to reflect and so on. And I think it's interesting to see what will come out of that in terms of people's approaches to what they do, how they do it, what's important, what's not. But it's just basically a huge social experiment.
Yeah, totally. There'll be like new bursts of creativity that we don't necessarily expect, new approaches, I imagine. I have to talk about your house because you mentioned it, and I'm sure you've got a line of guests just rushing to visit you. But tell me about your house, because it's quite special and it's been featured quite a bit in the media, hasn't it?
Yes, well, there's a program, that originated from over there, the Grand Designs. And Grand Designs New Zealand exists, and we applied to it when we bought the plans for our house. We found the plans online. It's an amazing design, we think. And Grand Designs is one of our favorite TV shows. And so we thought, they might be interested. We're on a beautiful spot in the middle of the countryside. We're surrounded by mountains. We've got 360-degree view where we are. I mean, it really is stunning. We can't believe it, really. And this house is, it's basically, if you imagine a doorstop, a little doorstop, just the wedge, skinny, long wedge. Basically, our house is like that, but in a scale that you can live in. And so it's quite skinny and long, and it's 2 floors in the high end, and then there's the courtyard in the low end, and it's absolutely stunning. We love it. I mean, it's very minimal, simple in its design in terms of the sort of structural, like a piece of art. It's a sculpture, really.
Functional art.
Well, I think it's the ultimate of architecture, really, in that it's hugely functional. It's incredibly well designed in terms of living in it, but it's like it functions as a piece of art in itself. And I think we love it. And the way it sits on this property here is gorgeous in that it relates to the mountains everywhere. But the most amazing thing, or one of the most amazing things, is that this was designed for a site in Maine, in the States, a completely different place. It was going to be for the architect's mother. It never got built. And then the architect, Jeff Day, put it on a website, and my husband found it, and we thought that would be cool. And it's on our site. It honestly is, it's as if it has been designed specifically for here. It works so well, relates to the mountains. I mean, Maine wouldn't have had the mountains. And because it's long and skinny, you can see out both sides, and you're just interacting with the view all the time.
Oh, that's so amazing. So when you say you've got 360-degree view of the mountains, it's like you're living in the mountains.
Yeah. I mean, they're sort of distant, but yes, you look out in the north where the sun is. So down here, that's where the direction of the sun's from the north. Those are all the main mountains that go down the South Island. But exactly, which is all round. It's just gorgeous. You're looking out one way and think it's amazing, and then you go over to the other windows and it's like, oh my goodness, that's amazing too.
Oh my God. Like who needs TV, right? I mean, I'm so envious because like currently I'm looking out my flat, and I love my flat so much, and we're really lucky to be here. But just before I join the Zoom meeting with you, I witnessed quite an intense standoff between two
Oh,
cats um, over a sign that says, "Please keep gateway clear day and
yeah,
night."
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like my view just pales in comparison to yours, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, my cat sits on the on her footstool and just stares out the window, watching birds, and we have bunnies that we're trying to get rid of. And yeah, no, it's
Oh my gosh. And she probably thinks she owns those mountains, right? Like everything the
yeah, yeah. And she's just in heaven. I mean, it's a really cat paradise. So.
Yeah, gosh. What was it like when you first moved down there and you were living in Auckland,
Yes.
moving from a big city to a place where your neighbours are mountains?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because we've always lived in big cities, but both of us have always really loved getting out into the mountains and getting away from things. And so I was pretty confident that we would just love it and wouldn't miss the city at all. And that is the case. But until you do it, you don't sort of know. A lot of people ask me, "Oh, how do you cope with being so isolated?" But I don't feel isolated. One of the requirements of where we wanted to live is that we would live close enough to an international airport, which is not so international at the moment. But so that's just an hour away, and we're 17 minutes away from a big supermarket, and there's plenty. We don't feel like we're sacrificing anything really. It does mean we have to travel for most of our work, but that's in terms of playing concerts and so on. Most of the time, mind you, sometimes I do concerts around here, and I do a lot of work with people via Zoom. So it's an advantage being here. I think we just love it.
You have your space, and then also I imagine you feel like when you come home, you are home,
Yeah.
and you're not anywhere in between. Because I feel like people in Auckland don't realise how lucky they have it if they're travelling around the city, especially if you drive, because it can be quite quick. I mean, like Auckland, in terms of big cities, it's big, but it's not as big as, say, London, where I'm right now. But I remember like going back to Auckland a few years ago, and my mum lives just east of the city, and a colleague in the APO, she came to pick me up, and she was like, "Oh, okay, so we've got rehearsal at 10. I'll swing by your place at 9:30." And I just thought, are you kidding? Like in London terms, like if you leave at 9:30, you're already late. And I think we got to the town hall at like 9:45.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so quick and so zippy. But I imagine just the rest of the world, you just get used to making that time to travel to places, don't you?
Yep. And to a certain extent, I have to make that time now to go places, except that it's pretty predictable how long it takes to get places.
Yeah, you're not going to get a massive pile up on the fingers crossed.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. It's just so nice to like hear about, just living in such a dream house in a dream part of the world.
I appreciate it daily, multiple times. It's just love it. Absolutely love it. It's a beautiful space to be in. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
So we're here also to talk about your initiative, Listen, Feel, Play, which is a blog and also weekly inspirations, which I've been reading recently, and they've been really nice during this time when I have had time and space to consider new approaches, different approaches to playing. Also had time to practice as well. They've been really, really useful. So can you tell us a little bit more about the philosophy behind this approach to music making?
Yeah, so when I first came down here, having left my 17 years with NZ Trio, because that's what I was doing in Auckland before this, with full-time performing and so on, I just had some time out. But then after that, it took about 6 months to sort of get a sense of what my next thing might be. And what had always been clear to me through my career, but also more recently, maybe in the last 10 years, was this desire to share the knowledge that I'd amassed through my career and through my teaching and through my performing and so on. And there's a lot of, I think, through our own play and through our own training in this industry, there's a lot of information that we miss out on, or it's not part of our traditional training in terms of how we engage physically, emotionally, mentally, that we're sort of trained in the mechanics of playing our instrument much more than, the whole picture around it, how we bring all of ourselves and how we bring it in such a way that we get the best out of ourselves rather than getting in our own way. And as a performer, I've been performing for 30 years, and through that whole process, I've done lots of personal investigation and different ways of using my body, or being conscious of how my thoughts play into what I'm doing. So this whole thing, also in my teaching, I think that sort of helped me crystallize this philosophy of listen, feel, play. Like if we're really listening and we're feeling, and then we play, but also this idea of playing, having fun with what we're doing, then that sort of sets up a really different path, a different trajectory, different experience than if we're thinking and doing. So instead of thinking, it's listening. Instead of doing, it's feeling. And so, thinking and doing is like putting all the pieces together, and then you sort of end up with this sort of stiff, unconnected way of being.
Inorganic, it's all kind of put together.
Yeah, and we're all in our head, and I mean that's just, we have to use our brains, but it's to how to use your brains in a way that it's coming from your body. And so in the process anyway of being down here and really having to get all of these theories and ideas out of me, and be able to share it with others and sort of work out exactly what it was, it became really clear that this listen, feel, play aspect was central to it. And so then I've been delving into this much more in a personal way in my own playing, and I have more recently in the last year and a half really discovered how important it is to be centered in your body.
Yeah, that's the key thing, isn't it? Yeah, I do notice you mentioning that word so many times in a lot of your little...
I have been mentioning it a lot. It's interesting because with this lockdown and not being able to plan for what's going to be happening in the future, I kind of decided, okay, well, look, I'll just commit to doing a weekly kind of inspiration. And so I'm doing this every week and sending it out to my database and putting on Facebook and so on. And in the process, I thought, okay, so it's just a really systematic kind of unraveling of my philosophy. And it was really interesting because it was so clear that I had to start with being centered. And so for the first 2 months, it was very much about being centered. And I mean, I could actually keep on writing more and more and more about that, but I'm sort of branching out into other things that all still relates to it. But this idea of being centered is when you really are, it's astounding how it changes the process. Absolutely astounding. I'm still amazed.
Yeah. Going back to how you talk about listening, and I think also quite a good word to use is observe. And once you start observing your center, you have that sort of point that you can relate to, can't you? And I feel like a lot of this approach has some parallels with, yoga as well. I do my best to do a bit of yoga every day, but I'm not always successful. But, moving from your center. So like, for example, you follow particular yoga videos and they'll say, try not to just yoink yourself into the pose, but you have to move from a place of center, don't you? And you have to make sure that it's coming from somewhere. Otherwise you're just, flailing about and then
that's
you
right.
get lost.
That's right. And that's a good way to put it, because I think, when we're playing, I mean, I'm a violinist, so I'm sort of gesturing now, this, and you can just be flailing about, like, what do you relate anything to? But as soon as you have your center, I think the thing that's really powerful is that it gets you out of your head and into your body. There's just so much wisdom that our bodies have, that if you really listen to them and allow to feel how your arm wants to move, or where your balance is, I mean, or where, just how do I want to move? And it's amazing how your body knows and informs you if you listen to your body as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's quite often, I mean, like playing an instrument is a fairly unnatural thing when you first approach it as a beginner, but you have to find that natural way to play your instrument. And quite often what looks and sort of feels good often ends up sounding good as well.
Oh, totally. So it's completely connected, because if you're because our bodies, this is another element of the philosophy, is that we have to use our bodies like they're our instrument, and like we're athletes. So it's all of those ideas are in there. And when you're using your body in a centered and balanced and ergonomically powerful way, the sound completely changes. But it makes sense because there's not the stiffness and there's not the sort of trying too hard. It's just much more natural. And that has definitely been something that I've been conscious of right from the start through my career, is how can I make playing the violin and as natural as possible. Yeah, and so when you're guided by that aim, it can change the whole process.
Yeah, and the perspective shifts as well when you're going to pick up your instrument. And I imagine, from my own experience, it can be quite easy to get bogged down with the little details, as you mentioned, the mechanics. And obviously those things are important, but then it can be detrimental just to be always thinking about the technique and how to do a particular process. But then it's sort of a matter of like stepping back a little bit and seeing a more holistic picture. What's that saying?
Yeah.
If you're not seeing the forest for the trees. Is that it?
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, you get distracted by all like the detail, and then you forget that there's a much bigger picture there as well.
And what I find is when I really make sure that I'm centered, even when I'm trying to do, you've got those details that you have to do. It's not about it's about being more connected to the technique and making the technique natural and easy. We just make things a lot harder than they need to be, and we get in our own way. And so it's working out, what am I doing that's not helping here? And coming back to your center and feeling your body. I mean, just as I'm sitting here, if I do that, it's just I suddenly feel completely different in my body. I'm aware of things in my body, and I can breathe more easily. Everything changes. And then the other side to the whole, there are lots of sides to the philosophy, but it's also becoming conscious of or choosing what to pay attention to, that we have choices, and recognizing, first of all, discovering the choices that we're making. So, for example, a shift that you have to do, how am I doing that? What's my focus? Or am I choosing to be confident with this? Or actually, am I choosing to doubt it every time, which is a really common thing, that we've actually built this questioning and lack of confidence into our process. And just recognizing that we've chosen to do that, maybe not consciously, but then being able to choose a different attitude or a different awareness that just completely allows a completely different process. So it's becoming conscious of what thoughts are useful and what thoughts aren't, and working with those.
Yeah, like filtering out a little bit as well. Because there are times when people do get nervous with certain things.
Everybody does.
And then, exactly. And it's very natural to think of, to amplify those bad feelings. Like, there's that classic feeling of when you come off out of a performance and you're always going to think about all the things that went wrong. Yeah, totally. But then, choosing to focus on the things that actually went well.
Yeah,
that's
look,
a whole nother side as well.
Right, absolutely. And we're not so good at that. And we have to get better at supporting ourselves in the mix. Otherwise, I think that's one of the reasons, certainly this is my own experience, a lot of people find as you go through your career that you actually become less confident and less sure of what you're doing, which seems just so strange. And I've never quite understood that. I mean, I'm sure it's not always the case, but I think our expectations become greater. So expectations is a whole nother thing that you have to sort of try and unpick. And then also we possibly start developing habits that become more ingrained as we're going along. But we also don't have the support around us. I think one of the things that people in our industry, it's expected that you learn everything you're supposed to learn at school, and then you just go it alone and you're supposed to know what to do. And that's another really big part behind what I want to do, is support professional musicians through their careers so that they can stay in love with what they do, stay in touch with their potential and their enjoyment in particular. It's to be really, stay connected to what really helps them be the best they can be. And we don't have enough of that in our profession.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely an industry where it's easy to feel lonely and easy to look at other people and think, oh, everyone is doing so well. And it can be just so toxic, and then I guess there's also that feeling of it becoming work
Mm.
it becoming, really like a job. It becomes a bit of a daily grind. And then you mentioned losing confidence as you get older. And then it's interesting when you see children play,
Mm.
they just don't really care. They can play with just that ease and
Yeah.
without getting too bogged down. Obviously, like it
Yeah.
goes back to what you're saying, the expectations are a lot lower. But
Yeah.
it's finding that ease again, isn't it?
It is, and it's completely possible. It really is. People that I've worked with, it's a lot of it's to do with recognizing what attitude or intention you're bringing to something. One of the things that really helps is an attitude of curiosity. When you bring curiosity to what you're doing all the time, it just opens up so many different options, and we lose that, I think, and that's what kids have.
Yes, and that's what kids do. That kids play, don't they?
Yeah,
I was actually watching a documentary just on the BBC a few weeks ago, and I think it was called The Science of Play, but we watched it because there were a whole lot of baby animals just playing. Like,
sweet. But baby animals are so cute.
I know, exactly. So you see like a little thumbnail of baby animals and you're like, well, I'm watching this. But anyway, it's about how animals in the wild play and the science behind that and how useful that is because they're practicing honing their skills that they're going to need when they grow up. And I think, as kids, we do play because it's how we understand the world. It's how we learn how to function socially. But then also, yeah, in music as well. That's so valuable, isn't it? I would say that some of my most valuable lessons I've learnt playing music have been when I've just been observing and messing around,
Yeah. And that's also because you're not stuck in your head worrying about something. You're actually in a different sort of zone. And so it's practicing getting, and I think that access to that zone is being in your body. So that sort of comes back to the centering thing. If you get proficient at being able to engage with your body out of your sort of that worrying mind, then you've just got access to a whole different world of experience, I think.
It's like being super aware of, as you were saying, isolating different parts of your body, really being aware of different parts. And I noticed this so I teach at a prominent dance school here in London where my students, as well as taking music lessons, their main focus is to become professional dancers. But their state of awareness, of physical awareness, is just absolutely astounding. Like I've observed their ballet classes before, and a teacher will say, just be aware of your clavicle.
I love it.
And they can just, open up. And then the teacher's like, oh, that changes everything. And like to me, because I don't know anything about dance, I'm like, oh, it looks exactly the same. But like it makes a world of difference. And I like that they have that physical awareness because they bring it to their music lessons as well.
Yeah. And, that's another side to my whole way of looking at things is to know how your body works and to know the structure of your bones. Very much so. It's interesting to hear the awareness of the clavicle, because I mean that's absolutely, it's if I know where my clavicle is, that's actually the start of our arm. It starts on the front of our chest. It doesn't. Our arms do not start at our shoulders. It's quite interesting. So it's really important to our alignment is very much about our skeleton and understanding all the joint. And when you have that kind of understanding, as athletes have, you have a completely different ability to move. And so it's really important. And we're not trained in that nearly enough. So yeah, thinking of yourself as an athlete, I think, is important as well.
Yeah, I feel like I do remember you saying that at some point
I probably
back in
did.
the day. But it was a long time ago now.
Interestingly, I think young people, life is so sort of different, and it's harder to get some of these principles in because I don't know if this is a fair thing to say, but things come more naturally when you're younger. But as you get older, maybe all of these ideas become more important in terms of making sure that you're moving naturally and not questioning yourself. And I mean, things change as we go through our lives.
Yeah. And it's good to keep being aware of this, isn't it? Because, life is always throwing you a series of curveballs, as we know. So, yeah, that's why I feel like it's been really, really valuable just to think about, we've got this time, so we can think about a little bit more about space and balance and center in our playing. Yeah. But it's just, cat.
Yeah,
was that a cat?
Coco.
Is the cat going to make a podcast appearance?
No, she doesn't make much sound.
My cat's the assistant producer.
They're nice.
No, he's great, but he won't be able to get in because I've closed the door. But
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I keep thinking about my centre. Also, I think maybe as a cellist, we focus a lot about posture, and posture is one word, but then that can manifest in people just sitting up straight. But it's quite valuable to think about, where does posture begin?
Yes, exactly.
And really, really grounding yourself. Like I find it really useful to think about my 2 feet on the floor, and then my 2 sit bones on the chair.
Yeah.
And then, if you're off balance, you really, really feel that, and it can affect the way that you play.
Absolutely.
You're also a creative performance coach as well. And as you mentioned, wanting to support professional musicians throughout their careers to make sure that they're the best that they can be. And, we're going through unprecedented times, as we all know. And for those of us living in places where live performance is still a way off, like in New Zealand, you're going back into live performance somewhat. But for those of us where we're not going to be performing in front of an audience for a while, what sort of tips would you offer to those people who are embarking on new methods of performing? I'm thinking like live streams and, recordings and things like this.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because that is actually one thing that I didn't personally investigate myself. It's such a different thing to not have that live connection. Sorry, that's my cat walking.
That was a heavy thud.
Oh, she'll come back.
Okay.
Anyway, through our lockdown, I wasn't really exploring ways to perform. For me, it was more an opportunity to just have a break and not so much reassess, but
reflect.
But reflect. But that being said, I recognise a lot of people are really needing and wanting that to keep playing and performing. I guess where I'd be coming from in that would be to really try and connect with what you really want to play yourself. So it's an opportunity to have complete indulgence in terms of what you want to play, how you want to play it. But it's also, you can choose the time frame. So, one of the things I find quite debilitating and have found debilitating is not having the ability to set performance dates, or that, we as musicians, we work towards these deadlines and dates, and we're very, very good at doing that, knowing what we have to do in order to be ready for such and such a date in 3 weeks or something. But I think what comes with that is also a different set of expectations about what we can do, how we prepare, and so on. So in a way, by being able to choose your own deadlines and exactly how you want to do it, you might be able to change that pathway towards that point in order to be able to prepare in a different way. Or, are there things that normally you wish you had time to do? So to be able to build that into your preparation process. Like for me, it would be about really starting from, I know it sounds like a broken record, but this place of centre. And that's actually what I did when, just before lockdown, I was very lucky. In the middle of February, I played all the Beethoven violin sonatas in 3 concerts. It was basically probably the biggest project I've ever done in my life. And the idea is that I'm supposed to be doing it in the States in October and November this year, but that won't be happening. But hopefully it's still going to happen next year. But having to prepare so much music to be performed in 3 days was a really intense project, but I really came at that from this perspective of, this is my opportunity to build up all of these works from this place of central foundation. And I did that, and it really reaped rewards. So I think, I'd just suggest to people there, it's a chance to reflect and consider your processes of preparation and playing. And it's really important. And to recognize that you have choices. That's another really big one. One of the things that I've heard so many musicians, especially orchestral musicians, say that they feel they're trapped, maybe too strong, but they don't have any choices. And it's like, no, that's rubbish. You have choices millions of times in every day, And it's to become aware of those choices and to own them. Or if there's a certain thing that you want to make a different choice, then having that power, even as simple as choosing how you're going to sit on your chair. It's really fundamental. Choosing how much you're going to be aware of the person next to you or not. There are just so many choices anyway. And it's really fun when you're in that kind of realm.
Yeah, and I think it's choices of attitude, isn't it? I'm just thinking about like this a kind of nightmare scenario, sitting next to a person that you've just described who's decided not to make any choices, and how that wouldn't be a very fun person to play next to. I think if one is feeling trapped in a particular scenario, such as orchestral playing, it's really useful to come at it with a different attitude.
Oh, it's everything. It's absolutely everything. So, for example, it's just to be, rather than trying to be something that fits in to everything around you and all your expectations, all these sort of outward things coming at you, there's a real potential to be able to consider, what is it that I bring to this? And
yeah,
when I'm in a zone that is really working for me, how does that work? And then you're bringing your best. You're focusing on what you're giving out rather than what's coming at you, and you're also much more aware of how you're connecting and interacting. And you can really flip the whole thing on its head.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? You are offering something, even if you're, one of 92 players in an orchestra. You're there for a reason.
Yeah.
And you could think, oh, if I wasn't there, then I'm sure the show would probably still go on, but it wouldn't be the same.
That's right. And I guess that's one of the dangers, especially for string players, is that you are one of many and you feel like, you could easily just not be there and it wouldn't matter. But of course that's not true. But it's about how your own personal experience is something that you have the ability to influence. And so it's getting to the heart of what's important to you, how you want to play, what you want to bring, what you want to contribute. And when you're in that zone, everything's going to work better. You're going to actually play better. Everybody else around you is going to be happier about what you're doing. And you're probably going to make other people feel better. And I'm very conscious of that. That's one of the things I enjoy about going into an orchestra these days. I mean, I've played so much in orchestras, but is that ability to impact on all the people around you in a positive way.
And that's the thing, when you're sitting next to someone who's just got that good vibe. And sometimes it's kind of indescribable, isn't it? But when you've got a good desk partner and you're like, yeah, this is great. Yeah. But when there's someone who's just not feeling it that day.
Yeah.
And it radiates. It gives out a certain energy.
Yeah, that's right. And then it's really important that you also know that you can, like, if you're sitting with that sort of energy, you don't need to be negatively affected by it. By the choices that you're making, you could actually you can't control how they're going to react, but you might be able to actually help them.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were saying before about you bringing something to the table as well. I think it can be easy to think about what you can take from a situation, but then you also have to remember that you're there to offer something as well. I think I noticed that personally when I went into South Bank Sinfonia, and I'd moved from Sydney, and it was 2013, and so I was 7.5 years younger, and it was a new city. I didn't know anyone in the orchestra, and I just remember initially my thoughts were like, oh, why am I here? Everyone who's in this orchestra has studied at these places in London, which sounds sort of mythical on the other side of the world, where we're from. And then I kind of flipped the burger a little bit and then started thinking throughout the year, well, I'm here for a reason. So there's obviously something that I can offer just by being myself, because of the build-up of my own life experiences and the way I convey them. You don't know, but you could influence someone in a particular way.
That's right. And so it's having the integrity and belief in yourself and consciously building trust into the picture as well, like trusting that, yes, I do have something to offer. I can hear myself saying all these things, and it's without a doubt, there's always questioning, and it's so easy to not feel confident, and I feel all of those things a lot, but it's about sort of facing them and then choosing how you respond to them. So imposter syndrome is one of those things that you hear people talking about, and I know that one intimately. I mean, the number of times that who the hell am I to to think that I can make a difference to people. But I just have to keep coaching myself, and it's actually, no, I do have wisdom and I want to share it. So that's sort of what's driving it. But the imposter syndrome is, I imagine it's rife amongst musicians, because we're so aware of what we can and can't do, and that's, as musicians, we're up against that all the time, because that's how we get better, is to recognize what's not working as well as it could, and facing it and making it better. So you're up that wall, or that sort of resistance never goes away. It stays right in front of you, no matter how good you are. And I think that's one of the challenges about being a musician. But it's being able to support. I love the idea that I can support musicians in the face of that, to work with that resistance, to enjoy what they're doing,
and empower.
Yeah, exactly.
Things always go better when people work together, I think. It's really interesting, isn't it? I think with imposter syndrome, if say something goes well, it's easy to look at yourself and think, why have I got this? Why did I get this opportunity? Why not that person whom I look up to, or is played that concerto or that excerpt amazingly well? Why not them? But then those are all quite superficial elements, I think. And you never know what has sort of led them to that path, and what's led you, to a different path.
Yeah, that's right. And, pathways is an analogy that I use a lot. It's like we're on a certain path. To get to the heart of what path you're on, and choosing whether that's the path you want. And you have a choice to be on a different path if you want, or a braided river. So the pathways that we're used to are the ones that all of our habits lead us down, and it's the easiest way to go. But you can actually make some new choices and get down different pathways and have a completely different reality. But it's learning, having the tools and the techniques to be able to sort of redirect yourself.
Yeah, to navigate. It might be quite a intimidating looking track.
Yeah, that's right. But
lots
super
of
exciting
to cut through.
No, that's right. So that's interesting, because that's the pathway that instantly comes to mind for you. It's this sort of bushwhacking one.
With the cutty grass, or the toy, as they say in New Zealand.
But imagine what's on the other side of that toy.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be an amazing immersive 360-degree view of some mountains and a wedge house.
That's right. You're going to stay, Davina.
Yeah. Next time, whenever that will be, if I'm ever allowed on a plane again.
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. I know. I love this kind of approach, though, because I use a lot of analogies when I'm teaching. Yeah. And I think they just help me understand what I'm trying to communicate better. And I hope that they make some of my students understand things. It works better with some children.
Yeah, that's right. The sorts of analogies that really make a difference for me is I use colour a lot. The pathway that's not working for somebody, they'll have a certain colour connotation too, usually something like grey, or but another pathway that if they can imagine it, would likely be a very vibrant colour, and and also in music, a phrase, a mood, an emotion. But if you can think of music as colour, the sound as colour, that opens up a completely different creative opportunity, rather than just black and white, loud and soft. There's the whole world of colour, which you can't describe all of that colour, but you can hear it.
Yeah, and then it's about tuning your ear into seeing / hearing all the different gradients, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a segment in my podcast called the Wild Card Question Round.
Excellent.
Mystique. I love hearing people's reactions. It's always different. But this is your opportunity to choose what I ask you next based on 3 topics that I present you. So we have food. They're quite general, these things. Wine and dream repertoire.
Okay. It's either food or wine.
Excellent.
Food.
food. Oh, I'm so pleased. A lot of people don't choose food, but I
Oh, really? Oh, look, my day is divided between breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I always look forward to the next one. So,
yeah. You tell time by your stomach.
right, really.
I'm quite similar. No, I love food, but yeah, there are a lot of people, choose not to talk about food, and they'll talk about something else, which is fine. I always get really excited when people talk about food. So tell me, what was the last thing you ate, and what's the next thing you're planning to eat?
Oh, well. So the last thing I ate was breakfast. And at the moment, I'm having, I know this isn't everybody's favorite, but I'm making this really yummy porridge. It's the middle of winter here, of
Of
course.
course, yeah.
But I make it with fresh almond milk that we make, which is like a completely different almond milk to what you buy. Like they're not the same thing. Super yummy. This is quite a lot of information. Is this good? Do I keep on
Yeah,
talking?
no, I really like this. No, 'cause this is the idea about the podcast is like, because I like that musicians have lives outside of music,
Oh my
you
God,
know?
absolutely. Yeah, possibly too much so in my life. But so the almond milk, you soak almonds overnight, and then you have to have a really powerful blender, but you blend it all up and then you squeeze it through a nut bag, and you've just got this beautiful essence of creamy almond. Anyway, so I make my porridge with that, and I use the big jumbo oats too. So you have to organic jumbo oats, and just cooks up real quick. And then on top of that, I put fresh fruit. So I had kiwi fruit.
Oh,
I know, classic. And tamarillos, because we've got those in season at the moment. And then I put walnuts on top. And then I make a really good coffee, because we've got a coffee machine. So I have a not too long black. So that's what I had this morning.
it sounds very nutty. I really like that, and I like dairy alternatives to milk now.
I don't really like milk, so.
Yeah, I find milk a bit sour now. I mean, I used to always drink it, and I'm not intolerant to it at all, but I prefer, like, almond milk is quite good if you can get a nice one. I'm sure yours, I mean, that sounds incredible.
Oh, it's so good.
But the big rage here is oat milk. I'm not sure if it is in
Oh,
New
okay.
Zealand.
Yeah, right. Well, they probably do that the same way. You probably soak it and then blend it up, and it's probably the
Yeah.
same thing. Well, I could try it.
Yeah, you could do. You could try porridge made with oat milk and be like super oaty.
Oaty. Yeah, interesting. And so then the next meal is less certain, because after this I'm driving over to Queenstown to pick up my husband, who's returning from quarantine, and we might go there's a really great cafe in Arrowtown, which is like 15 minutes from the airport, and it's called the Chop Shop, and they make this spectacular mee goreng, and it's really, really good. Like, I just don't think you can get it better. I mean, you're going to have different versions, but it's just so good. So, I mean, both Mark and I are just super fussy about, or not fussy, we eat all sorts, and it can be really simple and really good, or really complicated and really good, and everything in between. And anyway, so that we might stop there depending on how he's feeling for our lunch.
Oh, but a mee goreng though.
I've got my dinner planned too, of course.
Oh, go on, tell us your dinner plans. Yeah.
Mark's been away for 4.5 weeks, and so yesterday when I was in Wanaka, I bought this really beautiful lamb rack. So we'll cook the lamb rack. So we're big meat eaters too, and it'll just be really simple, but with probably roast potatoes, and we've got some beautiful dark green leafy things that I'll cook up, and we'll have a really nice wine, because we'll be celebrating that he's home, because we have a wine cellar as well. Mark has been a wine collector since I met him, so this is 30 years of wine collecting, and he's totally passionate. He writes about every wine he drinks. I just enjoy it, but anyway, we'll have a beautifully matched wine as well. So that's my day of food.
Oh, you're living the dream right now. I'm so jealous. I feel like if I went back to New Zealand, I'd probably start eating meat again. I haven't eaten meat in about half a year, but I think it's just like the idea is that I didn't really like eating crap meat,
Yeah.
of which there is a lot here.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
So, if you're going to do it, you do something
well.
really, really special like you're doing. But I'm jealous of your little trip to Arrowtown, because I love that. I love that town so much. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is.
How cold is it there at the moment?
Well, I'm nice and warm in my house because it's all centrally heated. So I'm just going to check on my app.
Oh, the heat's coming from where? From where? The centre, was it?
Oh, well, it's coming from the foundation of the house, definitely. Yeah, and actually the whole architecture and building a house thing, there were so many parallels to what we do. I mean, I'd love to talk about that too, because that was really interesting. But my phone is saying it's -1 degree outside, so.
Wow. Oh, that's proper cold.
Yeah, so that's Celsius. Are you Celsius there?
Yeah. Celsius here, but like weird imperial units elsewhere sometimes.
So anyway, so it's cold outside, yeah. But back to the foundation of the house, or the process of building a house.
Yeah.
As musicians, there were so many parallels. It was fascinating in that, first of all, for me, the whole idea, the foundations are so important, obviously, for building a house. You have to get that right. And the analogy for that as musicians with our bodies and how we build up a piece or how we learn to do something, it's so important to have that solid, well-structured, unquestioning foundation that everything then flows very easily and naturally from. So the heating in our house is all within the foundation, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've got like this amazing wedge house, in a beautiful location, but you don't have heating and -1 degree temperature.
And then the whole idea that you take a plan, the building plans, it's like a score, and that everybody can take these plans, everybody can take a score, and you're going to end up, say it's Mozart Symphony. It's going to sound like Mozart Symphony, but each group that does it, it's going to be a different version of it. And so every single step that you go along the way influences where you end up. It's a bit like this pathway. Each person goes down a different pathway. And all those decisions are so important and ultimately have an influence on that final product, which is what happens with music as well. How all the multitude of decisions we make. And so it's really having that end goal in sight for all the decisions you're making is very much the process that I think we go through as musicians.
Yeah.
When we take a score, when we learn how to do things. And it was a really interesting process. And then it's also spatial. So I think of music as spatial. I think of it as three-dimensional. I think that's the way my brain works. A lot of musicians don't think this way, but it was cool to be constructing a house, which was obviously in 3 dimensions, and it's the same sort of things. It's the form aspect.
Yeah, I think that says a lot. When you acknowledge how your brain works, that does inform the way that you make particular decisions. Whether it be building a house or making music, and then it's easy to find the parallels there. Justine, thank you so much for sharing your insights on listen, feel, play, and this wonderful approach to music making. Thank you also for sharing details about your house, because I've seen pictures and it looks amazing. And also sharing the analogies between your house and music making as well. And also telling us about your passion for food, because I always love hearing about food. Who doesn't? So where can people find out more about your work?
So I have a website, justinecormack.com. That's probably the best way, actually. And on my website, you can see me play, you can read articles that I've written. And then in terms of working with people, coaching people, I do a lot of that through, Zoom or FaceTime or whatever. And it works really well. So, yeah, probably the website's the best place to go.
Oh, brilliant. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today/tonight.
Yeah, this morning. Right.
Cheers. That was my chat with Justine Cormack. It was so great to reconnect with Justine recently. I mean, I left uni 12 years ago, and it's really cool that we can still manage to keep in touch. The wonder that is the modern age. This week's Music College Didn't Prepare Me is about performing with everyone's favourite pandemic-inspired accessory, the mask. Performances continue to be scarce around the world, but some ensembles are paving a way forward. Those who aren't wind or brass players or singers are able to perform wearing masks. But what's it like, given that no one has had to do this before? You may have caught some online streams of the string players of the London Mozart Players performing wearing rather fetching matchy-matchy red masks. My friend Antonia was playing in these concerts and said the first one was pretty horrendous, as it felt bizarre and very hot. But by the time they'd done a couple concerts, they got used to it. Apparently, it's just very hot and difficult to see down your instrument. Not to mention, if you wear glasses, finding that optimum position of your mask so that your glasses don't fog up constantly. It's like a sauna around your head. I mean, it goes without saying that no one could have predicted this pandemic, but can you imagine if music colleges started holding performance classes with masks to acclimatise to the situation? That'd look pretty funny. I personally am enjoying wearing a mask when I'm out and about because as someone who suffers from RBF, that is resting bitch face, and has been harassed in the past to smile more by people who don't know me, it's all coming out now. The combination of a mask and sunglasses is a very good way to conceal your naturally grumpy looking face. There are bigger problems in the world than telling strangers to smile or don't worry, it might not happen. Does that ever work? Whenever a stranger has said one of these ill-timed quips, I can't say it's ever made me go, oh, thank God, I haven't thought of that. I'm so happy now that I'm presenting myself outwardly in a way that is socially acceptable to you, stranger. It just makes things worse. If you're one of those people, just don't say anything. If you see someone that looks a little bit grumpy, just leave them alone. Your words are not going to change what they do. I've got a bit of baggage in this department. If you have something that music college didn't prepare you for that you'd like shared or discussed on the podcast, then let me know. Email me at asitcomespodcast@gmail.com. That's it for today. Special thanks to Roz Nagy for my logo and Daniel Elms for my jingle. Massive thanks to Justine Cormack for joining me on the podcast across many time zones and sharing her fantastic words. And thank you, as always, for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email me at asitcomespodcast@gmail.com. Like and follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at asitcomespod. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you think you know someone that could benefit from the stories, anecdotes, and experiences shared on this podcast, then tell them. Thank you for continuing to spread the word. Chat to you soon. Bye.